Hi, Greg Hughes from 90-Second Website Builder. You know, back in the olden days of designing websites, when you were working with text on your web page, you were limited to what kind of fonts you could use. For the longest time, we had to use what were called web-safe fonts, and we still do to some degree. In 90-Second Website Builder, your interface will probably show you the web-safe fonts. And what these are fonts that are universal. They're the fonts that everybody has on their own system, so that if you were to put a font on your web page, that font would live also on the end user's computer. So when they open up their browser, so if you're using Arial on your web page, that end user would have Arial on their computer and they could see that font. And in fact, if you were to use non-web safe fonts, you run the risk of your end user not seeing the text exactly the way you want them to, because they might not have that particular font on their computer. And so for years, we've only used web-safe fonts. And for the most part, we still do because they're universal. However, there came a day when Google decided to introduce a concept called Google Fonts. And so if you go to fonts.google.com, you can see that there's quite a directory and library of fonts that can be used and even used on web pages, because Google has a way of making these shareable, if you will. And that's good to a certain degree. The problem is they're a little bit complicated to install. So if you wanted to use a Google font on your website, you could do that. What you'd have to do is go to the Google Fonts system and select a font you want to use. And then you would have to work with some code. So Google would allow you to customize the variations of that font. If you wanted bold and italic and all that, you would choose that. And then you'd end up with some code snippets that you would need to plant onto your website. So you would have to work with these lines of code and you would have to specify these rules in your CSS. Now that's doable. It's not horrible, but it's still not great. But it did open up a whole new world of using fonts. Well, now introducing 90-Second Website Builder's answer to this dilemma, and it's something that's under the Tools menu called the Google Fonts Manager. And now adding a Google Fonts to your website is extremely easy thanks to this tool. By clicking on the Google Fonts Manager tool, all you're going to do is click the Add button, and you're going to be presented with the directory of Google Fonts that are available. And there are so many to choose from, you'll never run out of options. It's almost limitless. Not quite, but almost. But once you find the font that you like, you'll get a quick preview of it. Sometimes fonts have multiple variants, and when they do, you'll be able to choose from those variants as well. Here's one that has 2 variants. So if you wanted the bold version of that too, you could get it. Some of them have even more. This one has a bunch of variants. Anyway, all you do is select what you want. Click Install, and now you can use this font on your website with 90-Second Website Builder. So now if I select my text and go up to the fonts, I've got my new Google Fonts ready to be used. So that's the Google Fonts Manager in 90-Second Website Builder.